Welcome everybody to MogTalk episode 181. Today is Saturday, September 14th, 2019. If you haven't watched MogTalk before, it's a show based around the Final Fantasy XIV community, discussing everything from Savage Raiding, the Chugboat Racing, and other MMOs that might come into our world while we play Final Fantasy XIV, which of course is today. So before we get started, I want you guys to know who's on the show, hear their voices and everything. You probably are familiar with a lot of these guests because they come on the show often, but anyways, I'm going to do this completely out of order from what I have in the document because I can't remember what I put there. So I'm going to start with Mizzteq. Could you introduce yourself, let everybody know who you are?
Hi, I'm Mizzteq. I am a Final Fantasy XIV streamer and content creator. I also play a lot of video games and have a very annoying pet family that's going to make a lot of noise behind me. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. All right. Kai?
Hi, I'm Kaiyoko Star. I'm kind of the fashion report person, but I dabble into a lot of MMOs. I'm kind of a boomer when it comes to the MMO genre. It's been playing since back in Final Fantasy XI WoW days, or early WoW days.
You know, I think we could all pretty much be considered boomer for the MMO generation. I mean, I did EverQuest, and I think that was a really first big explosion of MMO.
Yeah.
First one had
Missed out on that one.
Okay. And then, of course, last but not least, Mr. Happy.
I mean, least is fine, too. Least is fine.
Yeah. I'll say middle ground.
There you go. I think, okay, we'll meet in the middle there.
Okay.
Yeah, hi, I'm Mr. Happy. I also do a lot of Final Fantasy XIV content on both YouTube and Twitch, but I do dabble in other RPG titles, anything with Final Fantasy in the name for starters. But, you know, anything, I'm doing Borderlands right now. That's nothing like that. Been doing classic WoW since that came out. So, busy.
And I gotta say, man, I've been busy as all hell too. Like, the games just keep coming out right now, and it feels like it's actually not gonna slow down anytime soon, because there are other games coming out. Like, there's the new Link game coming out, or well, you know, remake, and then there's Doom, there's Cyberpunk coming out. There's a handful of games.
Cyberpunk's in March. You got a little bit of time. Oh,
is it in March? I thought that was this. I can't remember anymore, man.
Or April, something like that. It's one of the two.
Yeah, and besides all that, I'm spending like 80 hours outside of playing video games, doing work and school and everything else, and trying to life, you know? Anyways, guys, we are talking about WoW today, which you're like, why are you having a Final Fantasy XIV podcast where you're talking about WoW? Well, a lot of people who play Final Fantasy XIV are also playing WoW Classic right now. It's actually pretty common that I would say, I don't know, maybe half of the population is also playing WoW Classic. Maybe I'm just making up bullshit numbers. I don't know, but most of the people I talk to are going back for that nostalgia because we all have some history in WoW. And there's a lot of stuff we can pull from that and how the community is reacting to this old version of an MMO and how that might affect us in the future, especially with future MMOs and maybe iterations and patches for Final Fantasy XIV or the future Final Fantasy XIV, or not 14, Final Fantasy MMO that might come at some point that we know nothing about, that we haven't even been hinted towards, but we just say it anyways. But to start off, I do want to talk about the very first thing that people have said before all this came out. And I mean, it was funny back that we were like, oh, WoW Classic's going to be competing with Shadowbringers. They're coming out so close together. You know, if Shadowbringers doesn't do well, it's going to crash because Classic is going to come out. Everybody's going to play Classic. And there's a lot of that going on. Obviously, I don't think that's happened. But the other thing that people were saying was that people are going to get into Classic and say, hey, you're going to spend 2 seconds in that game and be like, I'm done with this. I don't want to do this old shit. I don't have to run around and go real slow and do all these fetch quests and everything else. Did you guys have that feeling? Did you get in there and you're like, fuck this, I don't want to play anymore, this is too much work?
I definitely had a moment of excitement when I initially got into it. It was kind of reliving when I played it a long time ago, but so some of the excitement has definitely gone down, but it's more because just other real life obligations have come up and I'd rather prioritize those other things. It's not so much that there's anything wrong with it itself. I would love being able to sit there and play it all day, personally. Yeah.
Okay.
Did any of you guys play during the stress tests?
I played.
No, I knew better than
I
that.
did not.
I played beta a little bit, but that's it.
Yeah. My husband and I, Braddock, we played in the second stress test or something like that. And the stress test by itself made us think, oh my God, this is going to be the worst experience ever. It's going to suck. We're going to have like a 6,000 person queue, because at the time that's like how bad the queue is. So I was like adding numbers to the queue. It's going to be terrible, terrible, terrible. So I kind of went in with this like super negative, like no rose tinted glasses. I knew for sure that I was going to hate it. There's going to be like 12 billion people and it was not going to be the same experience. And then when Tuesday rolled around, or I guess Monday night rolled around, literally the server that we had chosen had 22,000 people. Like I tweeted about this and was just like, what on earth? 22,000 people queue. But you know, we kind of just like, we weren't like super hardcore about it or anything. So we kind of just waited until the weekend and started playing whenever he had off work. And I must say that I was a lot more, like I was definitely having a lot more fun than I thought I would. So I kind of had like the backwards experience to what I really expected. But yeah, I had a ton of fun and I still have fun, which is kind of surprising.
Yeah. I mean, I enjoy it when I play it. You know, sometimes I'm like, wow, all right, I'll read because I don't use add-ons for it at all. And that's maybe not the best experience to have if you want to enjoy it.
Oh, my heart when you said that. Oh.
So I'll get a quest and it'll say, all right, go west of so-and-so and go kill 50 of those things. And so I run 10 minutes west and I'm like, oh, shit, it said east.
Oh, east?
And then he just
I thought you said west.
Yeah. Oh.
You know, I started off playing where I was planning on not using like a quest add-on, but then I was like, okay, I don't have enough time for this.
You're just
like,
gonna Google them all anyway.
Yeah.
Like that's what it boils down to. Even back in the day, like we went to like Alakazam and whatever websites were available for you know, EverQuest 11 WoW Classic. It's just now it's, you know, then now people use add-ons for it.
Yeah, definitely.
Miz, are you using any add-ons?
Yes.
LVUI? Is you just go straight for LVUI, or did you go for Tuck UI?
I actually like the default Blizzard frames. Yeah. But so when I started, I was like, I'm not doing cooldown or add-ons. I'm totally gonna go like, because I don't think I used add-ons like myself personally back in the day until like way later, right? So I was trying to go for like the full experience. Like I made my original character. I like refused to use add-ons and stuff. But then, oh my God, you're kind of just like literally the same thing where there's like nothing, right? You're not used to just not, or it's been like years and years of having quests displayed a certain way. And then when they're not, you're kind of just like, ugh, what's the point? And so I think part of the reason is like we had limited time to begin with to play. And so we were wasting so much time like going back and forth without really thinking or like planning our route. And then that was when like add-ons started getting updated and stuff. So Braddock was like, okay, we're definitely installing like Azeroth Autopilot on Questy, like, all these map mods and stuff. And like we basically from that point on just used it. And it was a lot more enjoyable because it was stuff that we had already done. So it wasn't like we were getting rid of the mysteriousness of it or anything. But
right.
I think because we're crotchety old adults now, like it's a lot more important for us to just be able to efficiently play and have fun that way than really getting worried about it all. But yeah, so yeah, I do play with that on stuff.
I mean, and the main reason I think that's actually an important thing to talk about is add-ons completely change what the original experience was, right? It's kind of just a different thing when you go in there and you're kind of all these really hardcore things that I used to do and used to try to figure out the quest and what I had to do. That's not really part of it anymore, because you're right. Even though I don't have a quest add-on, if I feel like I read it and I'm like, I'm going to have to search a little bit, I'll Google it.
I think even though, like how Happy said, though, Alakazam and like wikis and stuff existed back then, like I remember doing that kind of stuff, like 11 especially, because like even today, like you'll use like 11's wiki, like there's no add-ons for 11, so you'll like oh, what do I have to do for this quest? I'll go look it up on the wiki. But that's it. When I played WoW back in the day, I remember doing the same thing because like the concept was already built in my head, so it was just a matter of the add-on streamlines it to the UI.
And honestly, you know, there were add-ons back in Classic, and most of them were pretty buggy. Like the people hadn't really figured it out all the way. Yeah. And you know what? The Classic add-ons I have right now, half of them are buggy. So it's like, it's still authentic to me.
Okay. I'm trying to think of with the other add-ons they have. There's not really. there's the quest add-on, and there's the UI add-on, and what other add-ons are people using?
Oh my god, there's an add-on for everything.
Bagnon, Titan panel, like literally
Dude,
everything.
there's one. So in vanilla WoW, it doesn't show you enemies what they're casting. There's no enemy cast bars. So there's add-ons, however, that parse the chat log to display one, because it just uses the enemy has started casting to then create a display for one. That way you can actually see when something's casting. Like, you can't even see what enemies are casting in vanilla WoW. You can see they're casting something, but not what.
You got to install the Peggle add-on, so when you're auto running to wherever you got to go, you got something going on.
There you go.
I remember that, actually. I used that back in... Oh
Bejeweled was better.
Oh, that was so long ago. I forgot all about it. The other thing that when we talk about add-ons as well is there was an add-on, I believe, and I haven't stayed up to date with this, but there was one for forming parties, and they removed.
Yeah.
They actually said we don't support this and made a purpose to not make that work.
So as far as I know, they changed something the day Classic WoW came out, so you couldn't be auto invited. Basically, so part of the thing is that if you saw a group that was, if you were all registered for the same thing, it would group up. You still have to walk to the dungeon or summon and all that stuff. I heard that one feature broke the auto form party, but otherwise it worked perfectly fine.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Because that's one of the biggest things, right? When we talk about going back to Classic WoW, is finding people to group with and then going in and doing a dungeon without all these extra quality of life things going on and helping us with it.
So you want to know something funny? As we're talking about this, I just got a ping on Discord from Elysium asking to install the RC Loot plugin add-on. Basically, it's the Loot Council add-on, so you can form Loot Council within the game itself. So that's one right there.
Kai, you were saying something? Sorry.
I was gonna say, I think that looking for group add-on actually parsed trade chat as well and formed groups, if I remember correctly. I don't know if that functionality broke either. I never used it, so it's hard for me to say what it is.
Yeah, I've never installed or used it either. I thought it was broken from day one, and people kept telling me, no, it's not broken. I was like, oh, they said it was going to be broken. They said soon after launch, though, and it was like the day of launch. So I was surprised that people were saying parts of it weren't even working.
Yeah.
So, I mean, do you guys enjoy having to look for people for groups at all?
No different. For me, I'm not someone who particularly finds that matchmaking ever ruined portions of game. I think it was very indicative of the advancement of quality of life, where on its own, it's not a bad thing. Because you know what most of my group experiences are now? Somebody shouts LFG, I say invite, and that ends our interaction with what. It's literally no different than if something matched us together anyway. It's just everything else around, dungeons being streamlined so there's less communication, crowd control not being as used. Those sort of things, along with matchmaking, for me, kind of hit the point of, I guess, when people talk about matchmaking destroying social, how people being social, I don't think it was that. I think it was everything on top of that that did it.
I think where it breaks it is when it's beyond your server, because then you're not building the server community itself. That's more where my concern would be with it. Is if you're seeing the looking for group chat and it's shouting, it's the exact same thing as going into the dungeon queue in my mind in a way.
Yeah.
Obviously, then the person is making the decision whether you get in or not. It's just how important is the server community it being potentially destroyed because of a looking for group in WoW. It pulls from other servers right now, like the modern WoW, and the same thing with 14's looking for group or Duty Finder crew.
There's so many people playing right now. It feels like even if you had a bad experience, you're just going to get with different people anyways later, right?
Yeah. It's the sheer amount of people that are on one server is completely different from what the old experience was. So yeah, it's hard to say.
Miz, do you have any thoughts on it?
One thing I've noticed though is if you're in cities and stuff and you're kind of just chilling, people, I've had people just randomly whisper me. They look at me, they see I'm a druid, they see I'm feral spec, and they're like, "You want to tank Nober?" And I'm like, at first I'm like, "Who are you, stranger?" And then I realized, oh, they're just literally they just ran past me, saw me, inspected me, and was like, "Hey, you up for tanking?" So I feel like that has been completely lost in any sort of matchmaking, even server only matchmaking, because you would just do it from the little window instead of physically looking at a character and being like, "Oh, hey, what's up, dude? You want to go?" And so that was kind of cool because I have not experienced that in forever. It feels like, especially like Final Fantasy doesn't have that unless you're like unlocking a dungeon and everyone's kind of around the dungeon door, and then you kind of notice that there's like a single ninja or something with like little party looking for group symbol, and then you like whisper them and are like, hey, you want to team up with us? You got a space or like a spot. Yeah. But for the most part, that's kind of been lost in most of the MMOs that I've played, right? So that's kind of cool. I don't use an add-on for looking for groups, so I'm basically just in trade chat shouting for whatever. And people seem to be pretty open to like having discussions too, where they're like, hey, I'm a so-and-so rogue and I'm level this, and do you want this and that? And I don't know, it's like kind of, I don't know if this is just like confirmation bias, but it does feel like there's a little bit more of a community feeling in regards to that. So.
I think for desired roles, that might be a lot more apparent because I've never heard of that. Because like since you're a tank, or I'm assuming you're tanking on Feral Druid.
Yeah.
Everyone's desperate.
Then you're and like people are desperate for that, and then the same thing for a healer would probably be the same thing. So
you want to know? It's funny because I didn't have a guaranteed group, so I've been leveling Ret Paladin, which sucks. But Prot Paladin also sucks, and Holy Paladin's the tank healer at 60, but it's not a great like. Otherwise, it's not really something you really enjoy leveling on. Right. So I was Ret Paladin, and what she just said happened to me. So I'm like, hey, you want to tank Nomer? Exactly the same dungeon, and I said, I'm Ret, and they're like, that's fine, and I'm like. It's really not. They're like, you know what they said to me? So we were going through and, you know, just everything. I couldn't hold aggro on anything because you don't have Consecrate unless you have 11 points in Holy. And there's no taunt. Paladin doesn't have a taunt. And they kept saying, hey, Paladin taunt. And I'm like, really?
Why'd you invite me? Yeah.
You understand I have Righteous Fury and I'm praying for auto attacks. Just stop hitting it.
Go ahead.
I will say back in the day of playing 11 though, because they did have like a little icon up above you, that interaction happened a lot there. So maybe it's just a matter of like you said that the duty finder or looking for group doesn't exist, and then people see something above your head, or like just that type of interaction had like happened a lot. Because I do remember messaging people, like just seeing them running around like the cities, like, and I'd message them, hey, do you want to do EXP or something like that, or whatever they had their flag up for.
Yeah.
So I think that's a lot more natural in an old MMO just because of that.
I will say, I'm a Feral Druid right now as well, and it is so easy to get a group for whatever I want to get a group for. They're always looking for a tank. They always need a tank everywhere, and I don't know why that is. Like, it's really, really bad.
You want to know why? It's because tanking, if you're not a warrior, tanking really sucks in vanilla. Like, feral tanks are like really high effort tank compared to warrior, and paladin is basically considered invisible other than holy. So, well, just the nature of things.
I've been doing pretty well with feral.
You can do well.
Yeah.
You can absolutely do it. It's just that's why it's like nobody wants to tank. It's just other than warriors, and even they sometimes don't want to do it.
Did they nerf warrior recently, like the demoralizing shout or something?
Yeah,
like that?
they did. They said it was unintentionally. Like if it hit enough targets, it was its effect was like multiplying if it hit like 4 or 5 targets. So yeah.
Okay. So I mean, this has been our kind of early experience. We're not all level 60 rating Molten Core or anything else. And again, WoW's been out for what, like
2 weeks.
Classic WoW, 2-3 weeks, something like that. So it's not a lot of people are at the end game, and we know the end game is going to be kind of, well, we don't know for sure, but we can expect, and from what we've seen, end game isn't really that intriguing with Classic WoW. I don't think we were expecting it to be.
We've all done it already. Like
it's no different than the formula. I mean, unless you're doing world PvP, like PvP and world PvP are really the only thing I feel like that are preserved in Classic WoW as end game. And that, you know what that labeled down to? That labeled down to level 60 mage, you know, camping the rebel camp in Stranglethorn Vale and just killing all the 35s. And I'm like, all right, dude, if that's your end game, that's fine. All right, I signed up for this by picking.
Well, it's only because there's no battlegrounds right now. So I feel like the reason that I'm playing vanilla, like I don't give a crap about rating because there's no like allure there, you know, like there's nothing that I don't know. But PvP, is something that is like eternal, especially world PvP, especially battlegrounds. Like I loved, like one of my favorite things when I was first starting to play the game, like being a druid in Warsong Gulch is literally like the best thing ever. So the whole reason, like 99% of the reason why I'm even bothering with classic WoW is for that experience again. And so because I crave this sort of world PvP experience that I miss so much and that I don't get in Final Fantasy, I'm like super excited to do that. Like I cannot wait until I'm high enough to just sit and Stranglethorn and gank like a loser. Like it's
gank losers and stupid nerds.
No, she said gank like a loser.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Like I was talking about the guy camping us in the rebel camp. It was so funny running up to like neutral ground to try and hand in a quest, and I'm just like, fuck it, I'm paladin. I just bubble and accept all the quests and then die. So what else can I do?
So I play on a PvE server. Originally, when I started playing, I played on a PvP server. I'll say that I played on PvP and we did it a whole bunch. But the whole reason that we all switched to a PvE server for this experience is because we have a lot of friends who work all day or have children or they have all this other stuff going on, and they don't want to feel like they're going to be ganked all night. And so they wouldn't play unless if they knew that they were going to have a decent experience when they came in. And so they wanted to avoid all the BS of being killed and all that stuff. And I'm okay with it because I just want to play with my friends. And that's really what it came down to me playing. But I will say, I do often see hunters in the Barrens going and befriending the pets, the mobs that are in there, and then hiding, and then having their little guy walk around like it's an actual creature so someone will attack it, and then they can kill them.
That's a really classic trick. Yeah. There's a few places you can do stuff like that on a few. Like if you're a rogue and you stealth up next to like someone who does an AoE with your flag on, for example, that's another one. Yeah.
People are trying to find ways to kill people in PvE servers still, and it's a huge thing. And I think the PvP stuff was a huge. I mean, back when I did PvP, I was the healer in a group of multiple people while we were leveling. So we destroyed everybody just because we had a healer in our group of people going around and leveling, and they just couldn't compete. Now I'm playing by myself. I don't know if I would have as much fun going and getting killed and ganked and all the other stuff because I wasn't going to be able to level fast enough to get away from it, if that makes any sense.
That's actually one of my most favorite experiences, though, from this is the PvP experience so I had mostly been in the Eastern Kingdoms the whole entire time up until like level 24, and then I finally decided to go over to Kalimdor, and I like went and started walking down the Darkshore and going into Ashenvale, and then all of a sudden all these hordes start horde around, and I'm like shit. So I'm like having to act on my mage. I'm having to be like more stealthy and shit because like I'd see like level 30 like horde people around me. I'm trying to do quests. And then I'm like, okay, maybe this is a bad decision. But at the same time, I was having more fun doing that, trying to like navigate my way through that. And I had like a interesting experience where I had to go to Stone Talon Mountains from Ashenvale for one of my quests. And I had like 3 horde people just all around me, kind of like chasing me up the Stone Talon like mountain path. And then all of a sudden, like this level like 40 priests just came out of nowhere and saved my ass from like all the people following me. So it was like that was like a fun experience, trying to like being kind of like nervous that I was going to get killed, but I don't have that anywhere else in recent MMO history that I've played, you know.
And
that's funny.
Good.
Sorry, he said mage, and I'm like, oh, that's why he's having fun. Because when that happens to me on Ret Paladin, I'm like, I sure hope this 8% increased movement speed I have gets me out of here, because I'm not
just blinking away.
Yeah,
like,
you're blinking. If they get
me
close, you'll Nova them, and I'm just like, I've got a point blank stun that lasts 30 seconds. That should save me, right?
Yeah. And rogues also have a lot of fun on PvP, and druids, I think, have a lot of fun with PvP. And I would honestly play PvP if I wasn't playing with my friends who didn't want to play on PvP anymore.
Pick another character. You'll level it in no time.
No.
No.
Yeah, no, I don't know if I'll ever have time to make more than one character in WoW. Because again, while we're talking about WoW and all these experiences and all this stuff that we have going on, we still play Final Fantasy XIV. We still play other games and everything else. It's just having that original experience, right? Kind of going back and seeing it again. Do you feel like in maybe 6 months from now, you'll still log into WoW Classic?
I mean, I haven't logged in 2 weeks at this point, practically. So it's hard
I mean,
call.
I
guess
plan to.
physically if we can log in, because my server still has, like, if you try to log in right now, it's like a 7,000 person queue.
Oh yeah, let me get my queue right now. Let's just for science.
So while I'm streaming, I have to keep both of our characters in WoW, and I know
That's actually a reason I stopped playing. Like, why I haven't been logging
Like,
in as much as
totally.
I just don't want to do that.
Yeah, because like we literally have like 2 hours a night on work nights to play.
Yeah.
And if you're spending 2 hours of those 2 hours literally in queue, it's such a waste of time. So I don't know. I have this like conspiracy theory where I think that Blizzard is trying to keep the queues up as high as possible so that people have to pay for another month of subs so that it forces people, like, you know, they haven't been able to play, so they're just constantly paying. I don't know.
I think that could create artificial desire too at the same time. So there's like two things going on there where they might be wanting it to happen. So
it's like Nintendo, where they didn't make enough Switches, so it's like always in demand.
I see Aloha over there in the bottom, Cubby's kind of curling up on your Moogle slippers over there.
Oh yeah, he actually hasn't done that in a while. I'm surprised.
Yeah. Sorry, I saw it. I was like, oh, that's adorable. And now we'll get back. All right. So I guess that's another big point to talk about. Is a lot of people said that classic WoW wasn't going to do well because we just don't have time to play it. All right, you're not able to get in and do what you need to do. Like, even when you get in, you're flying somewhere or you're running somewhere or something else. Do you feel like that's deterred you at all from wanting to log in and run that direction for a little bit, go do a quest and log out?
It's made me want to not do quests and just grind in one place, if anything, which I have no problem doing. I've done that for over a decade in various games. So it's the only thing. It's only dissuaded me from doing quests, which is whatever. I like doing quests too. It's just the running. So much running, and I get a free mount at 40. So I don't know what I'm complaining about.
A free mount at 40. Oh, that's right. That's right. I forgot about that. Mother
free.
Well, druids get the run at level 30, so that's okay.
Yeah, travel form.
Yeah, I don't mind it. But I honestly, I didn't mind it on even pre, cat form, feral swiftness, pre travel form, whatever. But I also feel like a lot of that is knowing how big the world is, because I feel like the first time I played, everything felt massive. Like, I remember running from Westfall to Red Ridge Mountains originally, and I thought, like, it honestly felt like it took me days, literally. But now, because I know literally the entire map, like, in my sleep, it really does not feel as big as it used to be. So to me, the travel time and stuff does not feel as crazy. So it's not that bad. And yes, it's like I'm playing with a mage and I'm a feral or a druid, so I feel like we kind of are cheating a little bit with our speed. But it's not. I don't know. I don't think it's that bad. It's actually kind of nice. It's relaxing. That was the one thing that I noticed right away. I don't know if it's because we don't really care about raiding at all. We're just waiting on PvP to happen. But it feels like there's literally no pressure to do anything. There's no pressure to level. And so because of that, we don't mind taking our time. Like, it doesn't matter that we're 2 weeks in and we're still only level 34, because it's like this stress-free environment where it's just fun.
Yeah.
We're doing quests, we're doing dungeons that we haven't done in forever, or rather, we're doing dungeons that we haven't done in forever where they're actually like challenging. I don't know, like it's worth it, I guess.
So there's a reason for us to stay in the 14 directory during this podcast.
There is.
I actually want to say that's one thing that I feel that classic, as 14 being the main MMO, while I've been at level 80 for all these years, I feel like that's kind of one thing 14 and classic will actually have in common. There's really no reason to rush. People kind of create a reason to rush. Like, they all, I gotta level. They pressure themselves. But 14 is generally meant to be kind of enjoyed, where you just kind of take your time and watch the story as opposed to rush to max level. So I kind of feel like similarly between the two, and that's just how I feel, though. I know the people, when it comes to 14, do not feel that way in general.
I think with 14, for me, I'm in that department where you're like, oh, people feel like they need to rush, like, just because, like, I just have this natural inclination for whatever reason with 14 just to go nuts and get like level cap as soon as possible. But I think with this, it's like it's giving me this experience of kind of a Mizzteq thing. I can take my time. I'm not really like worrying about it. Like, and I'm kind of enjoying the whole entire experience going through it.
Mm-hmm. No, I exact same opinion. Funny enough, I log in, and when I'm running around killing stuff, I'm like watching something on the side, and I'm like, whatever, I'm just grinding out my levels. I don't mind. I get to kill these centaurs multiple times in a row, and it's faster than going and running back and picking up a quest. Yeah. So it's fun. I don't know. I enjoy just going in there and relaxing and talking to people for a little bit, then logging out and going back to whatever else I have going on in life. I don't think I'll ever feel pressure of being a serious WoW Classic player. And again, the reason why we're in the Final Fantasy XIV directory, this is still a Final Fantasy XIV show where we're all players from Final Fantasy XIV discussing something else that's involving our life in our MMO world right now. So go into the WoW Classic directory and they're like, who the fuck? Even if we could get like in the top, like, 100 or 1,000 streams in the WoW directory.
Frosty, you just don't understand what your clout is like. You just needed to try. You just didn't.
Oh yeah, you're right. I could probably get all Asmongold's viewers probably to see this. And yeah. So I guess the other thing that I want to talk about, you were saying this a little bit, Miz, is the difficulty overall with some things that we're doing in a game. I mean, whether it's leveling up and killing stuff or it's doing a dungeon, like there is thought, there is stress into it. When I do a dungeon, and I guess when Shadowbringers first came out and you're doing all these dungeons and people don't have the right gear and everything, it can feel difficult. You're like, maybe I shouldn't do a big pool. Now it's kind of reduced to doing big pools no matter what. When you go into WoW Classic and you do that, it's not going to work out at all. You want to pull as little as possible every single time.
You tell that to these Scarlet Mono. Yeah, dude, you underestimate how much better people have gotten at games. Okay. I'd say for your average group in WoW Classic, that's 100% accurate.
Okay.
You will go in and you may have someone who wants to CC like sap a mob or sheep a mob. Like, it happens. It absolutely does. But I can tell you right now, it shows how much better people are at games now with the way people play Classic WoW. Now, the people who have like spent a decade playing MMOs versus people who have maybe haven't played WoW in a while, or are hopping into WoW for the first time for Classic. It is a huge difference. If you have not seen Scarlet Monastery, that place is literally just a mage's home. Yeah. They just AoE the whole dungeon for hours to level. Yeah, mages solo grind like 4 or 5 mobs at a time and stuff like that. But it's only a few classes can do that. Most people are going 1 mob at a time, as you've described, praying that they get Seal of Command procs and hating themselves when they do. Let's move on.
pretty much as soon as you get freeze, you pretty OP, and you don't have to worry about much. You freeze Blizzard, then repeat. You win.
Mage is S tier like big time right now because of that. Yeah.
I've had a few experiences where I go into the dungeon and just like I'm tanking with it, and if I pull, we accidentally pull 1 or 2 more mobs, it's just over. I mean, the healer just can't keep up. They run out of mana and they just can't do anything. Of course, at that point, I'm jumping out. I'm like, all right, let me spot heal as a druid, then jump back in the bear form, and I try to toggle and do some other stuff, but it doesn't always fix the situation. And people are definitely.
Then you run out of mana and you're useless.
Yeah, and then I can't turn back into bear form because I'm like, oh, I overhealed, right? Yeah. But I mean, there's also a lot of stuff with like gear. It plays a huge part in people not getting gear before going into like these dungeons as they go up. They still have like level 5 gear or something when they're level 30 something. And there's also been the issue, I think, where if you're just a couple levels lower, it's a world different dungeon than when you gain those 2 extra levels and you just completely power through it.
Well, older MMOs were not so much about flash or grandeur or anything like that. They were very much about core RPG elements, and one of the biggest things in older RPGs is level differentials. Having a difference in level is like there's a massive. Not only is there like a native stat difference between you and the enemy as it is, like there's accuracy, dodges, parries, blocks, the amount of your damage cap, what your max is, what your mins are. It's just all sorts of elements like that play such a huge role in older games.
The like resistances play a big part in that. Like it's very, very apparent the second you like have a mob that's higher level than you. It's like I'll resist half of my shit, and then I won't be able to like run away or get away because the mob will just run up to me because like half of the stuff is just not hitting. So it's definitely taking that into factor, like how I play, how I would play. Like, should I be higher level than anything I'm attacking? And
Right.
most of the time, the answer is yes.
And then when you pull a group, you're hoping that things don't randomly spawn because a whole bunch of people are attacking the same area. And then every once in a while, like they'll kind of go away and things will just rapidly spawn back, and you have 10 things attacking you and kill you.
Well, they have some dynamic spawn rate going on if you have a lot of people in the area, so I think that's a lot more prevalent in those situations. If you're in a area where there's not a lot of people, I don't see that happening quite as much.
Yeah, and one thing that's actually been playing a big deal with WoW Classic's release, something that comes from the modern era, is layering.
Right.
So what people will do, for anyone who's listening doesn't know what layering is, it's basically several instances of the same area exist simultaneously. That way, if they hit like a cap on a number of people in an area, they can another layer will form, and then they'll start filling with more people. What people try to do is they try to find high population layers where nobody's killing the mobs they want to kill, so they can get that faster dynamic spawn rates, but also not have any competition to kill them. So all the time in guild chat, I see layer, please invite for layer. You know, there's actually, I think, a chat, like a global chat you can join called Layer, where it's literally just a place where you go to ask for invites to get layers.
Okay. Yeah, I saw something about that with the layers and everything else. And I mean, it makes sense. There's no other way they can fix that issue.
Yeah.
But difficulty-wise, again, looking at this, do you feel like this leveling difficulty process is good? Is this something that we should be seeing in MMOs? I mean, it was kind of it really wasn't there with Shadowbringers leveling up and everything. It felt very smooth.
Heavensward had some really tough overworld. Like if you were a level difference or 2 levels difference in Heavensward, it was pretty brutal.
Right. I don't know. It feels like I would be okay having this kind of difficulty out there, and maybe with the dungeons and everything else while you're leveling up. And to be honest, I mean, when you go back and you level up in some of the A Realm Reborn dungeons, some of them you got to think a little bit. You got to pay attention to what you're doing, right?
No,
I don't think so.
So
I think
no.
I can't actually think of one. I just full pull pretty much anything just the same in A Realm Reborn dungeons now, because like
it's even easier now.
Arenvale, you full pull in Arenvale, you go through and pull everything.
I mean, I'm not gonna full pull that whole entire first room, but like anything after that, like but you can pull a large portion of that room still. Like you just have to be careful about making sure where you are within that room, because you don't want to get knocked back into other mobs.
It's as if you have people who know what they're doing, though, right?
Right,
I mean,
right.
You're joining with random people. You have to put your expectations a little bit lower until you know what they can actually do.
If I see a dancer, I'm pulling a wall to wall. That's my rule, because they literally kill the whole pack practically by the time you get to the end of the hallway.
Yeah.
If they even remotely press their AoE buttons, it's amazing.
I think what Frosty's trying to say is that the old A Realm Reborn dungeons are basically a little bit more tedious than the new ones are.
I think they're less tedious in this expansion than they've ever been.
Well,
like even like barring the super AoE pulls, I think that the amount of like changes they've done to potencies for job abilities, they overpower the old dungeons way more. Like you have 300-400 potency abilities or 1,000 potency abilities at level 15, 20 now. Like way more jobs have AoE if they're using it at all there. Yeah. I feel like those dungeons have just gotten like, I do not mind getting Sestasha nowadays.
I think I haven't played the other tanks yet, but I got Sestasha a few times on Gunbreaker specifically, and I could just pull the whole anything like the whole entire way through. I just run up AoE everything, because you have an AoE that does damage. Like you're probably doing near the most damage out of your whole entire party on tank. Like,
so you guys,
I don't know.
You don't think like any dungeons inside Final Fantasy at all compared to what WoW Classic dungeons were like in difficulty wise?
No, not even remotely close.
Final Fantasy has like real boss mechanics as early as Sestasha, and I feel like WoW.
WoW doesn't have boss mechanics in Molten Core practically.
Exactly, that's what I mean. Like, and that's just, I think, a product of the time, because in 2005, 2006, when they're making this game, that was like hard, you know, having a tank and spank boss for every single boss. And I feel like I'm going to mention Nomer because that's basically what I just did recently. The last boss of Nomer, I think, is like probably the first one that has like a mechanic that's actually maybe worthy of, I mean, you can
calling it a mechanic. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's like naming it as like a true mechanic. I mean, I guess a few of them have it, but it's never anything that is like worrisome, right?
Mhm.
But I feel like in Final Fantasy, they do a good job from like the beginning to show people mechanics as you go through the dungeons and stuff. But
Mhm.
I don't know. I think the difficulty in WoW dungeons is just the fact that
It's all stats. It's
Yeah,
just
exactly.
it's their stats versus your stats, and
Yeah.
that's all it comes down to.
Yeah, I guess you're right. So, I mean, when we're talking about it, going through the dungeon is difficult, but once you get to the bosses, it's just HP versus HP, damage versus damage, and armor versus armor, really, right? I mean, it's not anything major. You don't have to think too much when you go into it.
And that's where I was gonna go with that. You know, we've brought up a few times here. Is a lot of the times when you're going through WoW, it's you just kind of like brain off, do whatever. Like you're not really focused on, oh, I want to pay attention to this next cutscene, or you know, I got to wait in the duty finder for 6 minutes as a DPS. You just kind of go and you just kind of leisurely go at whatever pace it is you want to play, and you don't have to think. You're not trying to think of whether you're going slow or fast. You just kind of go, and it happens.
Yeah, I would say classic dungeons. I have to dedicate 2-3 hours, maybe. No, not really 2-3 hours, but an hour or two, right? You gotta.
Yeah, no, that's some of them. Yeah, absolutely. 2 hours. Like if you were doing, God, I could half of them, not like stockades, but like if you were doing like Black Fathom Deeps or you know Wailing Caverns, it's like yeah, you would probably be in there.
Yeah,
a couple hours.
It's a pain. It's such a pain because I'm like I'm sitting down and I don't want to dedicate my time to this. I'm doing this to relax, and so I'd rather go out and Thousand Needles and kill the centaurs over and over and over again for in an hour, 30 minutes, and get half a level from that than do a dungeon because it's just such a pain.
I will say in WoW, I like completely try and avoid the dungeons unless I have the quest for it. Like I don't have a desire at all to do it kind of how you're saying to go grind the dungeon. Like I want to avoid that as much as possible because then I am doing everything at my own pace. But in like go back to 14, it's like I just want to spam the shit out of every dungeon that I go into. So like I want to avoid doing quests as much as possible in 14. That's weird.
And the thing is, when you do quests in WoW, none of that matters at all, except for if you want to like a gear, like piece of gear. Like you do quest in Final Fantasy, it's all part of the story. It's a part of the world and everything that you're doing. But if you do quests in WoW, I don't. Hey,
listen,
care.
Don't you dare tell me Mankirk's wife isn't important.
Man, I thought that was going to be difficult. I don't remember why it was memed on so much. I was like, oh, here's this quest. I don't know if I want to start it because I just look at it and I'm like, oh, it's a corpse, and then I go back and turn it in, right? And then you maybe have
and then he goes, I understand, thank you, and that's it, just like solemnly, and you walk away and you're done.
I don't know, the quests and everything else. You could completely avoid every single quest in a game and all the dungeons and just get your gear or play the auction house or whatever else, and just work your way up to level 60, and you miss almost nothing of the game.
I think though, like I just talking about the leveling though experience of like the 1 to 60 thing, there's more to it than that to me though, because like I'm also thinking about how do I make money to get my mount at 40?
Yeah.
Like so I've actually not so much focused on just the aspect of I need to get all this EXP. I'm like, okay, I need to do this profession so I can make money, and then like what is my best way to conserve money and all this kind of stuff so that I make sure that I can get my talents or not my talents, my spells, and also like I said, the mount. It's like that's so much more of an intricate part of the game that makes you think about your leveling process and the whole entire journey.
Isn't it gathering? Really, you just get a couple of gathering professions and you just.
Yeah, you could. I went mining blacksmithing because I found that a lot of people just want to. Well, here's the thing: I pick up ores, right, and I can sell the ores. But if I happen to have enough ores to make something, even if I can't necessarily sell it on the auction house, because I think people are kind of overbuying. Like people aren't overspending anymore like they were in the first week, where I could sell like a wool for 4 silver and I could sell like hundreds of them. I had like 60 gold at a time. I was level 20 because I just sold wool and silk and like linen the whole time. Now it's like I actually have to go out and I mine the nodes and I make stuff, and I can either vendor it or put it on the auction house for like 60 silver to a gold, even if I just throw it on an NPC. So there's a lot of ways to make money. It's not as hard as I remember being, honestly. I think that's just because people are smarter about it now, maybe, or like there's more information about it now.
Are there auction house add-ons currently?
Auctioneer.
Auctioneer, yeah. Okay. So that ruins like everything, I think, to be honest with you. Auctioneer just makes
Auctioneer's pretty busted.
Yeah. Because it's so easy to just make money with Auctioneer. Miz, how much money do you have in the game?
I feel very attacked right now. So making money in MMOs is probably like my biggest flaw, as in I can't ever. But surprisingly, I do have like 23 gold. Yeah,
Wow.
I'm rich. Yeah, for me, I know that doesn't sound a lot considering Happy was like, I just made however much and I'm 23. But yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
I do like the aspect of the like mini game, intentional or not, of like choosing whether or not you're going to like learn a spell over just saving the money.
I'm like, Righteous Fury, no thank you.
Exactly. So I feel like in Final Fantasy, you don't really get that as an option, right? Like you just basically hit the level and ta-da, you have this new skill. There's not even any like even like class quests for abilities are kind of I mean, I'm sure if I was forced to do them, I'd be complaining about it, but it adds a little bit of an extra, I don't know, maybe like depth to the game that we haven't really had in a long time, which I can appreciate now. But it kind of makes you think about stuff a little bit more instead of just mindlessly getting to level 80 and then ta-da, having everything. You kind of have to like make decisions on your journey there, and then you know you have consequences whether or not you're gonna get your mount at level 40 or if you're gonna learn everything else and then not have any money or whatever. So it's kind of cool. It adds a little bit more to it, but I can see that in this day and age where everyone's like, oh, give me stuff right away, that culture that we kind of have developed over time, I'm not sure if it would work in Final Fantasy as well as it does in something that's like advertised as being classic vanilla experience,
Yeah.
I think
Frosty, that clip you took from me was a class quest that I died on.
Yeah, it happens. It happens to the best of us, man. My favorite thing as a druid is teleporting to Moonglade and then like, oh well, now I gotta fly all the way
everywhere.
back. Yeah.
But I love that. I honestly, I feel like no class in any game that I've ever played since has ever meant as much to me as Druid has in WoW. Like I always felt so freaking special because I had that Moonglade teleport and because I had this entire like extra lore around the fact that I was a Druid. And I feel like a lot of the classes in WoW have that, where there's a lot of like differentiation between the different classes. Like Warlocks, their trainers are always in the basement and they do all this like nasty crap, but they're still really cool and badass. And you eventually summon this demon horse, and I don't know. I feel like mages and their portals, like there's so many little things that made each class feel super special.
And these are quality of life changes. I mean, these aren't like huge. Well, I mean, some of them are kind of game breaking, but these are like quality of life. Teleport somewhere, or teleport someone to you, or things like that, or get a free mount that makes them special. And that's actually kind of interesting. It doesn't really take away from much of from everyone else, right? You're just saying, oh, you're a little bit more special in this area for something that isn't horrible.
I don't know, because I feel like a lot of the class balance problems spawned from things like that, because it honestly feels like there's specific little teams that worked on each class instead of having like this overall development team that's like, how do we make sure no one's like super overpowered and underpowered, because Final Fantasy, while they're really good at keeping everything balanced to relatively good degrees, I still feel like in that they're kind of losing what makes each class special, aside from how you look, especially now in Shadowbringers, where all the tanks are kind of the same, but we just look different and have different animations or whatever. But if you like really boil it down, it's not the same as having like a tank druid, like a bear druid versus a prot pally, like it's very different. And so I don't know, because I feel like not having the ability to play whatever you want can lead to like worse problems in games and stuff. But for something that doesn't really matter, where like the meta doesn't really matter, you're kind of just playing for fun, it's really nice to have sort of like differences like that where you feel cool and special playing your class.
No, I can agree with that.
I as much as I want to have balance in 14 though, I like, and the thing about it, I like that how WoW has like this very distinct characteristics is if you look at 14, you can be any class you want, and then you look at WoW where you have this huge, massive dedication to get to 60, right? And there's no, I feel like with 14, because you can switch so easily, they should be able to really push those defined characteristics even more, as opposed to worrying about that, because someone could just, if they don't like that their class is underappreciated, they can go level something else and get brought in. Like I don't, so that scares me every single time I hear like a developer's rationalization is it needs to be like this really close balance. Like I will complain about it as a person. Like I'm like, hey, I don't like that this class isn't like balanced, but class identity to me is more important be in this situation, because we have access to everything and it's so easy.
So
and it's an RPG, you know,
Yeah.
like you don't want to lose all those RPG elements for the sake of making everyone happy. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
So you're
Yeah,
saying that you'd go ahead, Happy. Sorry.
I was gonna say I do also really wish I could play more than one spec on Paladin though. It's literally like I'm not allowed. Like they're like, listen, if we don't need any other healers, you could come ret, and I'm like, great.
Well, I mean, the other thing is, again, to that point, is that you can't easily switch to a different tank job or different healer job or different
Yeah, I'd have to go level
yeah.
a whole nother character to 60. So like,
yeah,
you know, the problem is the commitment to get to 60. Then that's why I don't care about getting to 60, because it's like the commitment to get to 60 just to only be able to play one spec, which is fine because I like Holy Paladin, but
that's why I think it's a lot more negative of a situation in WoW of having the class unbalanced nature there to it. Yeah.
So basically, we're kind of all on the boat of it's okay for Final Fantasy to be a little bit more unbalanced if people were a little bit more open to playing other jobs and not, because I mean they have access to it, right? They can do it. It's just people aren't going and saying, "Oh, I'm going to go level a Dark Knight because Paladin just doesn't work very well." If we're in a situation where things were unbalanced.
Yeah, like Heavensward Paladin, as Goka's saying.
Look, I played whatever. I was content, dude. Like this is never gonna leave me, man.
It's never gonna leave.
It's never
Rossi,
gonna leave.
I'm so oppressed because I want to play Samurai so bad, but I know it's not good for my team, so I just stick with my.
I'm on Dancer, dude. My whole role is like under scrutiny right now. You'll be fine.
Yeah,
I know.
Just
do
you're
like
saying.
19k DPS as a samurai and make everyone cry.
Our bard is being oppressed and is being pushed to play ninja. So.
Oh, but I mean, the thing is, at this level of the game, it doesn't really matter. It's just like, as a group, we want to feel stronger, right?
Yeah, you know, that's kind of the weird thing is in both classic WoW and in 14, I'd say that it really doesn't matter what you play, but it matters at the same time. You know what I mean? Like classic WoW, none of the content is like cutting edge until like you get to Encourage and Nax. Like I'd say that's when they really started to figure out bosses, and I'd say that's where like what you're playing really starts to matter more than like this, or I think phase 2 is Dire Maul. I think is phase 2 for classic.
Yeah, I think it is. It's phase 2, and some of the battlegrounds I think get released in phase 2.
Yeah, there's some battlegrounds, and I think there's Dire Maul, and then battlegrounds PvP balance is a whole different topic. You know, Frosty, you're used to having to differentiate that in regards to 14.
Mm-hmm.
But for most of for PvE, it always matters, but it doesn't really matter because you're either good enough to do the content or you aren't. But you also don't want it to be, you know, to have the problem in the first place. It's so weird. Like 14 is super imbalanced in my opinion right now, like more so than it has in previous times. But it also is completely irrelevant for completing anything in the game. So it's
because the balance difference isn't really that big, right? I mean,
like you can go ret Paladin to Molten Core. It sucks, but you can do it.
Right, because
you don't even need all 40 people to be there to beat Molten Core. Why would it matter what you play in the end?
Yeah, it was one shot. Oh wow, they one shot something that there's already a strategy for, right?
Well, they not only that, but they did like private server speed runs to Molten Core like for like months and months and years before it came out.
Yeah. Gosh, there was something that I was thinking about. Oh, okay. So I want to, because we're all people who have played WoW and Final Fantasy 14 and everything else, and so we have experience with all this stuff. So when we start talking about new players playing WoW, have you guys heard anyone who's never played WoW who started playing it and had an opinion?
Yes.
Let's do Twitter.
I haven't.
Okay.
I got people in my stream who have never played any form of WoW, and they made Classic their first experience.
Okay.
And they were okay with it. They were like, they kind of just wanted to understand because they don't have the experience from that era. They're like, I get it, you know, like they said, I'm having an okay time. I'm just taking my time. That's it. That's the number one thing. I keep seeing people saying, whatever, I'll just take my time and go at my own pace. And those people are having the most fun in Classic WoW, it seems to me.
Okay. I'll let you know.
I'm getting the same general feeling
yeah.
just from what I've seen. Like people are, I was actually surprised that people that would never play WoW or have never played WoW would be interested in Classic WoW. So it was really cool to see people try it for the first time as their first WoW experience.
Mhm.
But I also feel like ever since Cataclysm, the new player, or I mean, every expansion since the new player experience in WoW is very like wacky. It's overwhelming in a sense, not in the way that like Final Fantasies is, but you kind of start really weird, like you're kind of disjointed from everything. If you've never played Warcraft, I feel like you really don't get the story. You're leveling so quickly almost through all those quests and the way that they redid leveling that it's just like it doesn't feel good, you know what I mean? And so I feel like Classic WoW Classic WoW, you kind of have that slow paced as it was intended to be played. Like, you know how anytime I get people that are like new to Final Fantasy, the first thing I say to them is just, you know, if you've never played an MMO, just follow the game because it will hold your hand and lead you through everything that an MMO is. And so I feel like Classic WoW kind of still has a little bit of that, where because it's so slow and because it's so like easy to kind of just go through the motions and go through the zones and stuff, you're not getting left behind if you've never played it before. But I don't know, I guess maybe people like that. And because if you were to jump into retail, it's like a gross
dude.
Monster,
if retail's gotten to the point where they're discussing doing a level squish now for retail WoW. You know, they did stat squish. They're so like people are getting kind of like there's too many levels in this game. That's a crazy
or they could just come out with a new MMO, man. Just like
literally like kill it. Just fucking do WoW 2 at this point. It's like it's heartbreaking to have.
It's called Overwatch.
Oh my god.
Titan.
Well, aren't they working on a single player Overwatch?
Yeah. I would say I'll give you my wife's experience. She played WoW a little bit like in the retail at some point way past, you know, the beginning, like I forget what expansion, maybe Warlords of Draenor, really late. And she got into it. She's like, I'm not really interested in it. It's not that great. She played Classic for like a day and she's just like, what the fuck is this game? Like she was like, how do I find the trainer? And then like she had to go and change stuff. She's like, do I have to buy abilities? And like it's a whole crazy experience where a very casual MMO player that plays other MMOs going back to it, it's a little disjointing, but I think after you get past that first figuring out like what WoW Classic is, it's streamline easy, right?
It's just very time consuming. I think a lot of people conflate how long it takes to do something with how difficult it actually is. And it's just a matter of perspective.
I feel like the leveling process is kind of all over the place because like you'll get to a point in a certain area where like the quests are going to be orange or red to you and it's going to be a lot more difficult to do those quests. So I think just the actual like where you go around the map doesn't feel very streamlined compared to like newer like expansions for MMOs and stuff like that. So I could see where like that is like a major holdup for people. Like they get in frustration,
especially for Alliance. I've never leveled Alliance before now. Oh my god, how does anyone done this? I hate it.
It's funny,
especially coming from Final Fantasy, right? That literally the story will lead you
coming from Horde. Horde leveling so much better until like 30.
Well, I mean, like I played Alliance. Well, I started Horde, and then like the group I was playing with fell apart, and I didn't want to play it. And I went to Alliance because I didn't want to level without them because they'd be upset if I level without them, even though I don't fucking play the game anymore. But I went to Alliance and I made other friends and everything else, and we leveled up, and we've been playing for a very long time, like most of a decade. I played with them, and they all came back to Classic, and we're like, okay, well, I'll do Horde again. And so it feels good to go back and see all the stuff that I didn't see since like Vanilla or BC. For me, it's been a long time since I played Horde. And I like Horde a lot better. Although, it's funny because the shit's still there. Oh, Alliance scum, Horde scum, fuck them. And It's never gonna go away.
I just want to be in Barrens for 20 levels. I don't want to go from like from like the starting area to like Stormwind to Tol Barad and then back down to Westfall and then over to Red Ridge and then back down to just.
It gets
I just wanna
old.
go to the
Barrens
Barrens.
gets old, dude. It gets old.
A lot of
quick.
trees, yeah, but it's either 6 zones with trees or 1 zone that's a desert. I'll take the 1 zone that's a desert. All right.
I missed leveling as a dwarf and a gnome and going through the snow area for like so long and seeing that. You won't see that for so long as a horde character. At what level is it, like 50 something? You get into like a new snow area or something.
Alterac, you're talking about?
No, not Alterac.
Or no, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's just east of Hillsbrad.
Winter Spring?
Winter Spring. Yeah, I almost said Wintergrass.
Wintergrass is
Wrath.
Northrend.
Yeah, that's over in Northrend. Wrong place.
Jeez. But yeah, okay, back to new experience for new players. I feel like there are a lot of people who are getting into it and they're enjoying it, but I think most of the people, even if you haven't played this game before or you have played, it's all like the side thing that you're like, oh, I'm so glad I'm going back and just kind of relaxing with it. It's not something that anyone's seriously sticking to, like this is going to be my main MMO. People are still going to play Final Fantasy XIV or whatever MMO they were playing and just go back there to mess around with every once in a while. At least that's what I've been seeing. Do you guys agree with that's the consensus?
I think that's the general consensus, but like just for me personally, and I don't know if this is how anyone else feels, is I would rather play Burning Crusade or Wrath of the Lich King.
Yes, Burning Crusade, so much. It's literally better vanilla for me.
Yeah,
personally.
Exactly.
Well, Kaza is what was so good about BC to me.
Dude, there's so dude. I loved the bear runs for Zulaman. Sunwell was great. Black Temple was great. The reputation grinds were a little bit better. I don't think flying affects world PvP, but it didn't stop someone from diving down on me in Hellfire Peninsula and picking me off when I'm trying to grab one of those things for the daily quest. Had so many good things at Burning Crusade.
Yeah, that's pretty much the only reason I'm like actually taking my time to get to 60 is because I'm just like, okay, here's my anticipation when it eventually comes or should come. I don't know why they wouldn't at this point with this kind of popularity. Like, that's why I'm leveling to 60. So I have 2 years basically to do it in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that they'll just take our characters and move to BC, or do you think they'll do fresh BC servers?
I think they're going to give people options where you can export your character from the server, and then they'll keep a classic server still running, because otherwise they're going to have people pissed off just like the same as before. And there you have private server situation all over again.
You think they're going to do that like once a year?
No.
I think they could do like cycles almost.
Okay.
See, that's the thing. I can't. I could never like just have a game make a new server and I just start over and do the same thing that I just did like a year ago. I couldn't do it personally.
I think it really depends on how they decide to do the transition from classic to classic BC. So
2.0.
Yeah.
Ms., do you have thoughts? I'm sorry, we're kind of conversation.
It's actually going back to what you were talking about.
Yeah.
So, when you're ready to talk about that.
No, let's talk. Go ahead.
So you were asking if any one of us would consider WoW Classic as our like main MMO, and obviously most of us are like, no, like we're gonna be playing, multiple MMOs, Final Fantasy, and have fun with that. I wonder if that's because of our age, and perhaps like because when I was playing, like when I first started playing WoW, I was like 16, 17. Do you think there are current 16, 17-year-olds playing Classic WoW as their first MMO that are essentially playing that as their main MMO?
No, they're in Fortnite.
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, you could be right.
There's like a dozen out there that are, probably.
I guarantee though that a lot of the newer people are specifically those Fortnite kids that are like being drawn over because they see it at the top of the Twitch directory once in a while.
Asmongold, yeah.
So like that's like oh, they're like, oh my god, I need to go play Classic WoW because like the streamer's doing it. So
it's all like cool kids are doing now.
Yeah.
I don't know. The graphics don't seem too bad to me. And I mean, some people are like upset and they don't like it. I used to be like, I would go back to WoW after playing Final Fantasy for a while and I'd be like, oh, this is kind of hard. But right now, going back to Classic, for some reason, it doesn't feel bad.
Well, because it's from 2004.
Yeah.
Maybe. I see the grass move when I run. And I'm like, whoa, look at that. Look at these advanced graphics.
They're really cool.
Is that your PC though able to actually do that? And it always existed that whole entire time, just like because you had this like shitty Dell desktop from Best Buy that your dad got you like for like $400.
I feel like this is a personal experience.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing.
Hey, I'm just making comparisons. Like maybe that's why the grass didn't move.
Yeah. No, like when I first started playing WoW, I was God, 11th, 12th grade. It was a long time. I think I was when I was senior. Probably same thing for Miz too. Around that time.
You're calling me old? What the
Yeah.
heck?
Yeah, old lady. Anyways, when we're going through and we're doing this, I had the shittiest tube monitor, the shittiest computer. I didn't have a family that could buy me a really nice computer, so I got discount, cheap ass computer because WoW supported that. They were like, yeah, if you have a shitty computer, it's still gonna work in some capacity. So all my graphic settings were low. Everything was pretty plain looking going through, but I didn't care. I was in this crazy MMO and there was 3D graphics and that was awesome to me.
World of Warcraft was the first time I had to actually open up my PC and install RAM into it as a kid. So that's like, I got the disc from like GameStop or I don't know, it was Babbage's or something at the time, and I'm like, I installed it and it was like, you don't have enough RAM. And I was like, what's that? I'm like 15 years old and I'm like, Dad, how do I do this?
Yeah, so you start learning how to build computers because of WoW.
Exactly. That is how I learned to build it.
Now, you see, I didn't have that problem. So when I played classic WoW, I was dating a girl whose uncle worked at Blizzard. No memes. Literally
okay.
worked
Sure.
at Blizzard.
Yeah, cool. Yeah.
So,
So he just gave us subscriptions, but I only play it at her house because I didn't have a computer that could play it at all. So that was my experience with it.
I kind of remember that from other MMOs I played, like really, really shitty MMOs before WoW came out, where I would go over to
Silk Road Online.
No, it was Tibia.
Oh,
it's a really small thing that only like 10 people in the world might actually know what I'm talking about. EverQuest, I couldn't play that because my computer wasn't very good, but that inspired me to want to play MMOs, seeing that and be like, holy crap, there's this 3D world out that people play in, and it was something I wasn't a part of. I didn't have a computer, and so I would try to go over to my brother's house, and I'd be like, hey man, can I get on your computer for a little bit? And I would play it, and I'm like, this is the best of days of my life. It's never get better than this. This is everything of my world right now. And so I was addicted to wanting to play online games and MMOs and stuff like this, and being in this virtual world, seeing all this fantasy stuff that I can't experience anywhere else but in EverQuest. And then, I went through a couple of different phases with MMOs and playing online and being completely addicted to them. But I'm trying to think, the reason why WoW was so, this is the best game, is because it was such a game and a franchise that everybody was familiar with, and they wanted to jump into this world, right? If WoW was just like some random story that no one knew about, some random franchise that just like completely off the grid, would it have blown up as much as it did?
You want an example of why we know the answer is no? There's one 4-letter MMO that proved to us you cannot ride the coattails of World of Warcraft before any other. Rift. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Their whole marketing shit goes, we're WoW, like we're just like WoW, but it's a whole new world with our own lore and everything. And it was fun. I liked it.
you could say that about WildStar too, because they are.
Yeah, but WildStar is full dead.
Like Warcraft 3 and Frozen Throne X-Pack is like the signature promotional tool for WoW. Like,
yes,
if you played Warcraft 3, you probably played WoW.
Yeah.
And all I did was play footies in Warcraft 3. I can't wait for HD to go back for more footies.
You know what's funny? I remember I didn't like oh god, I can't remember what the name. StarCraft. What all this called? It's tactical. What?
Are you Brood Wars? Is that
no? The type of game. Why can't I remember the type of game?
RTS?
Yeah, RTS.
Yeah,
For some reason that
real-time
just
strategy.
left. Yeah, real-time strategy. There we go. I tried that with Warcraft 3. I went up and I was like, oh man, I'm building stuff. This is cool. I'm about to go take my 5 guys over here and kill this guy. And like 500 dwarfs come over with guns and blow the shit out of my base. I'm like, I don't play RTSs. I play MMOs and I leave. But I was in the WoW or Warcraft universe beforehand, and I knew Arthas. I was like, oh, that's such a cool scene where he goes and he kills his dad or whatever else is going on there. And I knew I knew somewhere in the world.
It's a great way to describe the scene. Yeah.
I mean, that's
whatever else is
popular.
happening,
Yeah.
Arthas is like the literal reason why I was like that whole entire story like was what drove me to actually continue playing WoW even while I was playing Final Fantasy XI at the time. It was like I kept and I like Illidan was there too because it's like Illidan, Arthas, and then like and like a back to back and like expansions. It's like that really like kept you invested in those things. And as soon as those were gone and Deathwing came, and I was like, who the fuck is this? Like, and someone told me, like, oh, he's in this story from way back when, and it's like I don't give a shit. Like, it's like the Warcraft 3 story is what made me want to play WoW, and I think that it still is somewhere deep inside me that's like, okay, I need to play Classic because I want to do this again because it was that impactful on my life.
Yeah. I think Blizzard understood that Warcraft 3 is a big reason why people tried out World of Warcraft, not Warcraft 1 or 2, specifically 3. Because otherwise they would not have burned their 2 best villains like right off the bat. Brought one of them back again. They keep bringing back the guy who's the Lich King now, Bolvar. He keeps showing up in cutscenes and stuff. Because they know, like as soon as they brought Deathwing, they're like, oh, Warcraft 2 character? Thumbs up, man. Congratulations.
Yeah, it's just seeing stuff that you cared about and part of a story and knowing that somewhere in the world these people exist and there's something that could be a part of your world later on when you're going through and doing the MMO. I thought that doesn't really exist in WoW anymore because it's this crazy, like retail WoW is some crazy story I haven't kept up with in a while, and I don't care about a lot of different other characters, and it's all just this big mess. Yeah.
You know what's funny about retail WoW? So a lot of people blame Cataclysm for the downfall of World of Warcraft. That's like kind of like the beginning of the end, as people might see it. I don't think it was that bad, but I certainly agree that if in terms of like classic, Wrath is where I like draw the line.
Yeah. That is definitely the cutoff for me personally too, because like I tried to play Mist, but I was just like I did Cataclysm and like I got through the first raid tier and I was like, why am I doing this anymore? Kind of thing. Yeah.
And nowadays, like I watch all the new cinematics whenever WoW releases stuff. And there's also a bunch of people like Noble who releases lore videos for World of Warcraft, who I love consuming. I actually think that their world building team has actually gotten a lot better over the years. And I think that shows in Battle for Azeroth. It's just the core game is so unsatisfying to people, and a lot of the lore threads, some of them are coming back from stuff that was cut from Cataclysm. So I can't help but feel like way people view Cataclysm as like the beginning of the end, and BFA being literally what people are starting to call the end has been pretty funny drawing those parallels.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get into, like, we talked a lot about WoW. We had a lot of WoW stuff. Let's start transferring into things that it might mean for the future of things that we do really, really care about, like Final Fantasy XIV and the future of how MMOs are going and everything else.
Nothing.
No, nothing. Okay.
Yeah, we'll get into it.
Well, I mean, like, so will Final Fantasy XIV change at all because of people's interest with Classic, or is it just going to keep on the same path of everything else? I'm going to let Miz start this here because I want to get Miz's opinion. I saw you look away, so I wanted to...
Sorry. Yeah. No, Braddock just got home, so I actually missed your question.
No, okay. Yes, I can. So is there anything from Classic right now with what people are actually liking with the whole experience with and everything else that could transfer into what we see with other things with Final Fantasy XIV as it develops further?
Kind of. So I think we've already seen it a little bit. So Baldesian Arsenal, which I'm obsessed with. So if you hate it, I apologize because I'm going to gush over it. But I think the very end of Eureka, not all of it, because like the beginning part of it had some issues and stuff, but Baldesian Arsenal as an entity in the game, where there is no in-game system to find groups to whatever, forcing people to talk to each other and like spawning these insane Discord communities because of it. That to me was like so quintessential, like classic WoW, classic MMO community building that I think we're kind of missing nowadays. And so I think because of how successful that was in creating such an amazing sense of community and like even like doing it, because I think the fights themselves really aren't that difficult, but the whole like logistical aspect of it of trying to find 75 or I don't even know, it wasn't 75.
56. It was,
56.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dyslexia, sorry. Finding that many people to go in and even like entering the instance was like this entire like ordeal. I don't know. I feel like that kind of reminds me so much of like even people traveling across the world to go to dead mines or something, you know, like it has that same sort of like feeling to it. And so I thought that was really cool because it reminded me so much of vanilla. And so I would love to see more of that stuff. I would love to see more content like that where there isn't an easy entry into whatever it is, you know, one that requires like a bunch of people, like more so than the 24-man raids, the 8-man raids, to communicate somehow to do and like accomplish it. You know, like I thought that was like one of the coolest things in Final Fantasy. And go ahead.
I was gonna say that to me is my highlight of my whole entire Final Fantasy experience. I think is Baldizian Arsenal. It is, or out of 14. I getting 56 people together and being able to go with them and like in a Discord and then being super coordinated, like that is the MMO experience that I want to see, because it's a bunch of people participating together trying to work towards a common goal. And like when I feel like with 8 people it's like a group of friends, but when it's like coming together as a community to accomplish something really big, those are the types of things that like define MMOs to me. Like there's nothing better.
You know, I'm going to say this as a level 22 in Pagos who never leveled up further than this, that experience was great. And I think we all kind of agree if there was a better entryway to get to that experience, it would be better, right?
Well, so I think that's kind of part of what made it what it was, is it suddenly became this thing that people who hadn't touched Eureka wanted in on. And there are people who suffered through Pagos. And even by then, Pagos wasn't really that bad. It was really only Pagos that was still even remotely a struggle. Onimos and Pyros and Hydatos were all super easy to get through. But this sudden like boost of interest because of these people who had kind of suffered through. And I think when it comes to old school MMO and old school feeling, it is suffer through. Whenever you're talking about like the long, that's exactly where I was going with that. Yeah, I think actually that the only entry that was stupid was the actual entry into that, which having been a member of the world first group for that, we lucked out so hard. The only reason we cleared it first is because people on the JP servers were griefing deliberately the people asking, hey, we're going in, we're a coordinated group, please let us take the portals. They were griefing them while we had a full instance that like came together as a community. It was like, do it, guys.
I think that was the thing though, is like with the world first, because like I had taken time off for that, like and I had been one of the first people when like I know you guys were searching for a bunch of people.
Yeah.
And when we got in there, it made a lot of different communities all come together though. It wasn't just like I'm assuming like next time something like that comes out, it'll be a lot more coordinated ahead of time because we'll know. But like the experience of like just getting a bunch of people that previously were broken up into these little groups and just coming together as like a bigger group for common goal. And like then on top of that, there was like the meta game to like some people were watching like the JP streams because they were saying like, oh, how do you get to unlock absolute virtue like within there? Like it's like there's so much more to this than just like, oh, tank and spake a boss, or like do this X mechanic watching this guide or something like that. It's like there's a whole entire like meta game experience to it that's really important to me. Yeah.
Okay.
I think just the actual getting into Baldes, like the portal system, was the big thing I didn't like. That shit was awful.
I don't have to do a world race for this when it comes out in the next iteration.
We didn't. I don't think we really expected world first. Yeah. I mean, Yoshi P didn't mention it until I met him in Japan. He was like, "By the way, tell them I said congratulations." So I was like, "Okay."
Yeah. It's kind of cool because this is just something that they were experimenting with, and after seeing so many failures of experiments in Final Fantasy, and I say failures as in community did not receive it very well, I feel like that was an awesome win, and I'm curious to see if we can have some more successes in Shadowbringers that are kind of like that, where it's kind of a new thing that we weren't expecting, and we all work together to figure it out. But
It's scary to me that they haven't brought up anything like that yet.
Well,
tonight they might have some stuff.
yeah,
maybe
there's a
tonight.
few things they have, but like we kind of have inklings and things to compare them to. Like 5.1, which the live letter is going to be in about 4.5 hours, a little bit more. 5.5, sorry. Is there's some things in 5.1 that they've mentioned that I'm just like, you guys are really backloading the launch almost, in a sense. Like there's Blue Mage exclusive content for 4 Blue Mages. There's the thought of fixed parties for them and Palace of the Dead as a potential. There's Holy See of Ishtar, New Game Plus. Nobody cares about that. There's
I gotta have a show.
There's new gold. No, you don't. There's new gold saucer mini game. Like and then there's people being excited for Nier. There's new ultimate, new main scenario after the main scenario is just received. It's kind of weird to feel like we need a specific win that's like Baldur's and Arsenal when it seems like they'll probably replicate it in some way at some point down the line. So do we just want another win that's along the same line as BA, or do we want another win that's completely different from it? Like, are we looking for that next hotness?
I think from just me as a player and how I enjoyed that and that experience, I think that was the good thing that came out of Eureka. So it would be nice to see that come every other patch, like in like the 0.1, 0.1, 0.3, 0.5 patches, like not just like that one patch at the very end, because I don't know. I think that's very important to bring the community together somehow in ever so often, and you can have your static stuff in like the even patches, and then the odd patches you have this more community based thing.
Yeah, like PvP community stuff could happen during those patches too. It'd be great. Miz, do you have any thoughts on any of this?
So tying into what Happy said, I think instead of it being like the exact same thing, I think you can even like look at each step of Eureka and see how they learned on their way. You know what I mean? Because it was like really bad, and then it was like okay, and then it was really bad, and then it was like okay, and so they kind of learned, and then they came out like the final finale of it was this like really cool experience, and I feel like they're probably not going to do the exact same thing again because they learned from it, and I don't know. I feel like this is one of the questions I asked your CP back at the last event, and I feel like I am confident in knowing that they will take what they liked from Eureka, or what we liked from Eureka, and then implementing it into hopefully like a brand new, super cool way that still kind of has the same elements of like that community building and like that extra layer of difficulty just from not having like an in-game system to help you through it. And so I'm excited to see what they come up with. I hope they do something like it. I honestly don't know if they will, but I think it'd be really good for the game because it offers this entirely different avenue for people to like progress in without having to like really commit as much as they would for like ultimate rating, right?
You know, now that I think about it, maybe I'm being too much of a Final Fantasy XIV fanboy by saying this, but it feels like, you know, we've had a lot of stuff going throughout all these expansions where the team is trying different things to see how the community reacts to it, whether it succeeds, it fails, whatever, learns from it, then kind of goes on to the next content. And sometimes they make it a little bit better, they go into the wrong direction of what we want it, but it seems like they're tuning what the current Final Fantasy, like the MMO community wants. And so with this new content that they're coming out with, they're constantly, I don't know if other MMOs are, because I don't play other MMOs a lot. I don't know if they're going out there and trying to test the waters and try to figure out new things and try to make a better game for what the current day MMO players want. But it kind of feels like that. Yeah.
I think that comes though with a subscription game though, because there's so few of subscription MMOs, because you can't have to validate the reasoning why someone keeps paying for that subscription. But the problem is with all these other MMOs is they're all free to play, and then you're just like cash shop oriented. Like that's not that's what I see. From like the outside. Like I said, I'm not playing them, but that's the biggest problem. With the other ones.
Yeah, I mean, that of course, Final Fantasy has its own cash shop, and we can all talk about the wonderful White Raven earring debacle there, Kai, right?
I don't want to talk about it, honestly.
Good.
I'll get very opinionated quickly.
No. You know, I will say that I do dabble in the occasional free-to-play MMO, whether it be through sponsorships or just like naturally inclined to try them. And I've seen some really great ideas die because of the games they get thrown into. Like One that I played that seemed to draw a lot of elements from Final Fantasy 14. I think it was Twin. It was called Twin Saga or something like that. One of those like Korean free-to-play MMOs, whatever. But they had like a Final Fantasy 7 style world map where you had your mount, which was your house, and then there were world quests in that. And then when you went into the individual zones, it was more like World of Warcraft, third person over the shoulder. You play every class on one character. There was a lot of really smart ideas in this game, but the cash shop was the only way to get anything reasonable, like content wise, done. So I see tons of great ideas die in these free to play MMOs. That it's really unfortunate.
Yeah, it's because these teams are trying to figure out how do we make money off of an MMO, and you know they're making decisions on a financial base, what seems logical from their side, but it doesn't really work out and keeping people's attention and making them want to play. So I guess another part that I wanted to talk about a little bit. I know we're running closer to the end of the time that we have today, but with MMOs and what we're going to see kind of in the future is kind of interesting to talk about. Final Fantasy XIV has a story that it was like, this is the Final Fantasy story that we're having. It has a lot of nostalgia things that we throw in there, that you're familiar with Final Fantasy universes. Do you think that there's any, we talked a little bit about WoW needing that universe that you're already known, that you already played with in some way or fashion. Do you think if they took an old Final Fantasy franchise like 6, or they took the world from one of these old MMOs that we love, and then made an MMO with that world in there post when that game ended, that people would dive into it?
I feel like that's exactly what they do, though.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
That's
they just
literally
don't pick
what
one
the game is. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, because WoW's is like a history of like a line, or I mean, obviously Draenor made that where there's like alternate history, but like,
Oh, no,
but like you have all these like different stories that you have that are unique to the idea of Final Fantasy because of like all the concepts of the franchise, like, and then you're just pulling from all of those. So they're doing exactly that.
Well, I mean, it's like, it's a part. It comes in, it's like, hey, we exist. Like the Tactics storyline. Like, it's like, hey, we made ourselves in this world somehow. But it's not that universe, right? It's not that world. Like, you can't say Final Fantasy XIV's world is a different Final Fantasy from before, right?
And I'm kind of glad that it isn't, because I actually find it far more intriguing to see them take something from the franchise and put it in their world and have it make sense and click with everything that's there, than to take something that's pre-established and just paste it and be like, this happened. Okay.
Really?
You know, I mean, Crystal Tower is drawn right from Final Fantasy 3, and almost the entirety of Final Fantasy 3's plot is made relevant in 14. And I mean, look at what's happened in Shadowbringers with that, like how far that idea like 5 years ago has come in all that time. It's insane.
There's so many concepts that are just drawn like all over the place with the story, like with the Shadowbringers, it's like the warriors of darkness sacrifice themselves to the world and stuff like that within Final Fantasy 3. Spoilers are too late, but it's like all those concepts are there. It's,
by the way, Miz has played like no other Final Fantasies, barely at all, right?
I'm currently playing 8, and it is fantastic.
Okay. So what if we made an MMO, or the developers made an MMO where Final Fantasy VIII's world, like you could go into the Siege ship or whatever else, or you can go into all this stuff. You wouldn't like actually having an MMO where you're exploring that world?
You know why I wouldn't? Because those games have a world map. You know what I think back to it? Warcraft is all these like different portions of the story taking place in these isolated sections of the world, and that world opening up into an MMO is on a whole nother level. Like, oh my god, all these things that connected, that from that game, that from that. When I play a Final Fantasy game, I eventually get to see the whole world. There's nothing else to build there. I've gone around the globe, literally from top of the mini map back down to the bottom. Like, all I'm gonna know and see are all these towns, unless maybe you make it like 6,000 years in the future and like civilization is completely different. But then why did you do it in the first place?
Because it brings people in. They want to be in the world.
But they want what they experienced. They want something that's really close and dear. If you just completely uproot it all to build something on top of it,
right?
And
well, I mean, if you do it like 10 years or 100 years in the future or something, and then you're like, well, something's going on and you're limited to this part of the map, and then you could expand upon the future and on, or into a different world. There's stuff I think you could do that would still work pretty well, but I don't know. Opinion is my own, of course.
I feel like that's been tried though with an MMO, so I don't think that's necessarily like the way you accomplish it. Because Star Wars, Old Republic, like there's the Star Wars galaxy, like the biggest, one of the biggest franchises on the planet, and those two MMOs failed. So I don't think that's inherently the thing that needs to be there. I don't know. And
then I'd be upset because, like, let's say there's an MMO based on Final Fantasy VIII. Now there's all these other Final Fantasies that am I just going to draw references from those like I do in 14 now? And
I mean, Final Fantasy VIII already does that.
Why base it exactly? But then why base it in 8? Because 14 can more naturally be like a conglomerate for all those things because it's its own world. It's not based on a pre-existing one.
All right, I'm going to go to Miz because I saw her making hand gestures to some of the comments and other things, so I want to hear her opinion on it.
No, I'm just very bitter about Star Wars, the Old Republic.
Okay.
I don't blame you. So you know what I said when I played that game? I went, I'm just going to go play WoW instead.
It was the best single player MMO ever made, but actually now Final Fantasy XIV is the thing.
Yeah,
I was about to say.
Yeah. So one thing though is, do you think, here's like a random, like, maybe hardball question. Do you think that everything struggles so much because as a genre, MMO games cannot survive in our current culture?
I had those thoughts before, but I don't currently have them.
I think about it. Retail WoW is struggling. Final Fantasy is doing well, sure. But I don't know, like, I don't know if it's like luck or something, and now the only other MMO that is doing well relatively is a remake of a 15-year ago MMO, you know? So it's like anything that's new, I feel like is constantly struggle butting. So is it
what is old is new again?
I think the problem though is that with WoW development, as I've heard it from other people, is they tried to make the game too much for everyone, and it's lost its like a uniqueness, right? And like what it appeals towards other people, right? Like and so everyone's not getting what they're wanting, and it's just like a mixture of like problems. And that's my concern sometimes with 14. But
see, that's not what I've seen. See, what I've seen with retail WoW, it's not so much trying to be too much for everything, is that they're trying to make it so you cannot not play that game for a month. Like you have, like you're always either trying to grind, like, oh, I didn't get this legendary, I need to Titan Forge this item, I need these Azerite traits, and that's all for one character. If I have a second character, good luck.
There's no like end point almost of like you have goals in mind. You're like, there's no real goal when you have Titan Forging being RNG, right? So
they just started layering RNG on to keep you there longer.
That essentially. I can agree with that. That's part of it, probably.
I think the pressure to keep people playing something at times pushes people away. It's one thing to put something new in a game, like, Fortnite does a new season, and then there's these gameplay changes that, people can be excited about, but they're not demanding that people be there for it. They're just putting it there and presenting it. So if somebody wanted to stop, the pressure, the ability to stop is sometimes a way to get people to keep going. You need people to feel like they're free to make the choice.
Makes people, or like kind of forces people to keep playing Fortnite though, because all of those brand new skins that if you don't have them, you're not cool, and you get FOMO basically happening. So I feel like the battle pass inadvertently kind of forces people to keep up with Fortnite seasons, regardless of whatever it is, because they don't want to miss out, right?
True. I remember playing Counter-Strike back in the day because I wanted to log in and play Counter-Strike and just kill other people, right?
Wow, what a loser.
That was
dude.
Yeah. I went to the cyber cafe and I was like trying to play with other people with Counter-Strike. Would get 6 people together and just play on a 0 MS LAN or whatever, and it was good. Back in the Magic card store, well, it was a tabletop store that sold Magic cards, and then they had like 6 computers in the back that people could play on. Oh, fucking
cyber cafe that sold cards? Legit.
Yeah, it was pretty legit. And then they actually had cyber cafes that started to have like little DDR machines in the background and cup noodles, and then they'd bring you those little yogurt drinks and stuff. Like, hey, come on, stay here.
You know why I couldn't do cyber cafes? Because all the fucking StarCraft nerds would rip keys out of the keyboards for optimizing their hand movements, and they wouldn't put them back. Assholes.
Oh my god. Okay. Anyways. I guess we should start talking to chat a little bit here, kind of get some of their thoughts too. We've talked about a lot of stuff today. There's tons more we could talk about. We could probably go on for hours, but we'll try to keep it at a good pace here. I do have a short little ad for the stream about subbing and everything. By the way, subbing's super cheap right now. You can sub for like, what, $2?
$2.50.
$2.50. Yeah, and it's some sort of, I don't know, cross like promotion with Subway, but don't fucking eat at Subway. That's gross, guys. I'm just gonna...
What kind of you understand? Subway's giving away free subs this month. Maybe they were tuned in. They had their finger over the button. Like,
I doubt it.
This is the guy we're gonna give 100 subs, because that's what they're doing. They're going around giving people randomly.
I don't believe it. Even if they did, that money wouldn't make me want to go spin. I could spin it at Firehouse or something, dude. Like
I'm not saying they would give you the 100 subs so you could go to Subway. I'm saying you could. You don't know, man. They could have just been there.
Anyways, look, I'm never going to be sponsored with Subway. I'm sorry. I'm no Jarrett, guys. I'm going to go ahead and play the ad.
I hope so.
I hope not.
All right, guys, we are back here. And just to remind you all, before we get started too, we do have a giveaway for a little dog right here that will be happening. If you live, if you have an address in the United States that I can ship this to, I will ship it to you if you win. Just, you know, if you have some weird legality thing and you live in a different country, then you're not eligible to be in the contest, but as long as you can give me a U.S. address, I'll be shipping it to you for sure. So, anyways, before we start that up, we do have a question from someone on the show that wanted to ask a question. Kai,
all right.
go ahead and ask it.
So this question's kind of related to like the streaming aspect of like the difference between Final Fantasy 14 and like WoW. So there's been like obviously a massive boon specifically towards like World of Warcraft right now and like being at near the top and all this. And do you guys feel any of the aspects of that are caused by like how the game is itself, or do you feel like there's something like Square Enix should do kind of to make Final Fantasy seem be more prominent, or is there something more on the streamer side that's like necessary to happen to like really boost like Final Fantasy 14's numbers? Like just in comparison, WoW directory's booming right now, that's why.
Yeah, it's just with the times. Anytime something new, I mean, Apex Legends, Fortnite, PUBG, like anytime something's booming, it's booming. But there's always that core audience that no matter what, when their interests align, they come back. Sometimes it's once a month, sometimes it's once a week, sometimes it's once a year. But as long as people who enjoyed 14 before continue to stream it, continue to play it, and continue to bring their communities into the Final Fantasy 14 directory, it's just a matter of the times. 5.1, when Ultimate comes around, we'll probably see a huge boost from that, like we do from the previous Ultimate streams.
Yeah, I mean, what was the Final Fantasy 14 directory like back in 1.0 or back in A Realm Reborn when it first came out?
1.0 was just in TV back then. I don't think there was a directory for it. A Realm Reborn did really well, but there was a lot of people, you know, it was the new hotness, you know, oh, the next WoW killer in 2013 kind of thing. So there's a lot of people who don't normally stream it who are streaming it at the time.
Okay. Miz, are you kind of in the same opinion, or?
Yeah, for sure. Like if you look at the Shadowbringers launch and our numbers on Twitch for that was pretty good. Like it was like 24K or something easy, which for Final Fantasy is huge. Sure, right now in comparison to the 200,000 that are watching World of Warcraft, it's not the same, but at the same time, I feel like Classic WoW right now has a lot of like very big streamers that are big no matter what, you know.
So you guys would argue that the comparison of size is specifically related to the streamers, not so much the game or
dude. Asvin like is like 30 times the 14 director on his own half.
Right, I understand that completely.
Yeah.
It's just I see a lot of these like for example, like the first raid for like Molten Core or Onyxia or like the first 60, and I don't really ever see that kind of stuff happen in like the 14 directory, where those are small people like that weren't really well known, and all of a sudden there's this large boom like watching this particular stream. Is it like just there's so many people, they're so nostalgic for that particular content?
Well, I mean, that happens with Ultimate when you're at the last phase, or with like anything else. If you're streaming like the last phase of the new fight, it kind of gets really big. People unknown become huge, and then they get partnered and everything else, and it's pretty quick. It happens a lot. And so when we're talking about that, sure, I mean, it's not near the same degree,
right?
But with first 60, it takes a really long time to get 60 in Classic versus getting 80 in like Shadowbringers. So I think that's the difference, really.
I think there's so many elements at play that just saying one or two, it's hard to nail down.
Why one person is successful on Twitch over another, you know?
That's fair. I was just honest. I was curious about it because that was the first thing that popped in my head. Is like streaming is a big deal for Classic. So
and you have to think like WoW has had 15 years almost to gather its viewer base and stuff. And sure, like I think MMOs in general, people don't watch them as often. But I feel like Shadowbringers, considering how new it is doing all right. Like it's doing okay.
All right, I'm going to do the giveaway here. If you guys want to win this giveaway, again, US addresses, I am going to, you have to type in chat woof woof. If you type that in, you'll be entered. The guests on my show, of course, are able to enter as well if they'd like to. If you have a US address.
Enter, but if I win, don't give it to me. I just want to type woof woof in chat.
Sure.
Yeah, same.
That's okay. You guys can.
I just want the satisfaction of winning something that I won't win.
Okay, that could be fair. All right. So yeah, type in woof woof here, guys, if you guys want to enter in for this doggo giveaway. I have one question that I was going to start with. I figured this is really good. Could you guys, maybe if you don't want to, you don't have to. What's your best Murloc impression? All right, Miss Happy's winning. Okay, Happy wins. Happy wins, I think.
I was ready for that in case you couldn't tell.
Yeah, I saw it. Okay, here's another question that's coming by. Guys, keep typing woof woof in chat if you'd like to enter for that dog. Do you think PSO or Phantasy Star Online will be good competition for Final Fantasy 14 and Classic WoW when it comes to the States?
No.
I think anyone who cares to play PSO2 is already English patched and has been playing it for years. It'll get a nice little boost when it first comes out, and it'll have all completely different servers. I doubt some of that content will survive to the West because some of it's very legally questionable in the United States.
Oh, is it?
Well, there's so many collaborations that the idea of them getting the rights to distribute it worldwide when it's probably been like Japan exclusive rights for all these years. For all the collaborations, maybe they will, but I'm not super optimistic. I think it'll be fun, but I think a lot of people won't really be down for PSO2 as much as they would have 6 years ago when it should have came to the United States.
Yeah, it does feel like I don't have the interest of playing an MMO if I know I'm 10 years behind, or like, well, I know I'm really far behind the rest of the world that's playing it, so it's weird to me. All right, another question here. With the success of WoW Classic, do you think we'll see things like Final Fantasy XI Remaster, Guild Wars coming out again? The first iteration.
I can tell you right now, if Final Fantasy XI Classic came out, I would hate myself because I would not want to play it, and everyone would demand I play it on stream.
Yeah.
You say Guild Wars?
Guild Wars. Yeah, that was
like original can't jump Guild Wars. Ugh.
Yeah.
Good PvP though.
11 you couldn't jump either. Funny enough.
There's an emote for it now in 11. /jump.
If there's a 75 cap, I would personally play it.
I couldn't stream it, dude. I couldn't. I'd be like at Leaping Lizzie. There'd be like 6 people show up. I'd be like, oh, I can't camp anything while I'm live.
I think that's a streamer problem.
It is a streamer problem. That's why I wouldn't want to play. I also wouldn't want to sit at Fafnir for 3 hours.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Yeah, no.
I think there's aspects of it that I wouldn't mind being taken away from the original, but that's in the current game, like the Fafnir popping situation and King Behemoth popping situation. But like, that wasn't what was important about 11 to me. It was everything else.
You know what I think is the big thing when it comes to talking about a lot of these classic games, like the idea of bringing something that's classic back, is getting people to agree on what is the right time frame. Like, do you go back to, in 11's case, do you go back to Xylark? Do you go back to COP? Do you go back to Treasures? Like, there's multiple starting points, and the idea of doing again, I'm not a big fan of the idea of a server progressing and then another fresh one coming out and then progressing. I'm not a fan of that idea, so it doesn't work for me.
Okay. And I guess this is, I'm going to ask another question here, but I'm going to remind everybody you have one last chance here throughout this question. We will do the giveaway after it's over. If you want to enter in for this dog, you got to type woof woof in chat. But to follow up with all that stuff, do you think a lot of what the online gaming community has changed into with streaming and everything else kind of dictates some stuff of how developers have to make their games? Because if we go back and we look at classic WoW, easily could harass people with PvP and everything else and other things and completely crash servers because someone's too popular and they're playing on a server, right? How do you guys feel like now that we can't really have those aspects as we had before because of Twitch and other things?
I think developers think of streaming and YouTube, like they think of that content creation when they do certain things. But I think in specific, like the specific cases you mentioned, where like an individual like area gets DOSed, essentially DDoSed, because someone's really popular, it's like you can never be ready for that. What are you gonna do? Like increase the capacity of every zone they go to? And then, you know,
they should never design around that. If it happens at one server that's kind of like notorious for having streamers on it, like I feel like you're just asking for it at that point as a player. So I don't think they should factor for that.
Yeah, you signed up for that. Most people who would be joining that signed up for that. It's like when people join a PvP server and then they complain about getting ganked. It's like you opted into this at character creation.
Yep. All right. Let's go ahead and do the giveaway, guys. Give me just a second to do the draw here. All right. So Ace Kanky Overlord, I believe you won this. If you're in chat, you need to say you're in chat just so I know you exist. Yeah, congrats on that. And we can get after stream and everything. We can actually start talking about how to get that over to you. That's if you say anything in chat. But I'm going to go into this next question as well while I'm waiting on that. Why do you guys think maybe Elder Scrolls Online is really not talked about as much as other big MMOs when we're comparing things like... Okay.
You know, I actually think it's because they're kind of happy with where they are. I don't think they want to be the next WoW or like another Final Fantasy 14, but I also don't think they want to compromise anything more than they already have, because it really, to me, doesn't feel like an Elder Scrolls game, which is my biggest problem with it.
Okay.
I also think that it shares some of the jankiness in regards to Elder Scrolls game, like combat. Not a strong point of Elder Scrolls games. But you know, every time I look over at ESO, it seems like they're pretty content with the way things are. You know, they get their expansions, they get their new updates, they have their world building, their story, their lore, and outside of it, I don't think it's very fun to get in as a new player, but I don't think it's particularly bad anymore. It's just certainly not in the upper echelon of what people look at when they think of popular.
Okay. Here's another question here. Do you think Square Enix will bolster its MMO team to release more content with the success of Shadowbringers? Do you feel Final Fantasy XIV needs more challenging raid content in between patches?
I would love that, but I don't think realistically it would happen.
So, yeah, Kai.
Go ahead, Happy.
No, I've said so many things. You go first.
Okay. My perspective is they're probably always looking, but it's whether the developers exist in Japan or not, because I feel like an MMO developer more is existing in America than it is, or what the West than it is in Japan, and they're running into a lot of problems.
Yeah. Just as a reminder to people, across all the teams for Final Fantasy 14, it's actually the largest MMO development team in the world, like more than World of Warcraft. But majority of those people do like art or design and character models and stuff. The number of content developers, they literally at like every fan fest and convention, if the question comes up, they're like, please, we want more. We are literally always hiring, please.
And that's actually something that they said before, like when they were talking about Ultimate, they said they have 3 developers in the world they can think of that would be able to develop Ultimate.
In the company. They have 3 in the company who are qualified enough.
But, well...
The other thing is that I think it's difficult because I'm suspecting that they only want someone who speaks Japanese to be the developer. So it's even segmenting the population of the whole entire planet, where like I think a lot of game developers, there's a lot of times they're English, at least in the rest of the world. Because I've worked in the game industry, I've encountered like most people have spoken English, or like have to know that have came from other countries. I know that's coming. That's my suspicion. That's all what it is. It's hard to get a non-native Japanese speaker, especially in design situation.
So I got a question as a general low amateur programmer person. When you go to places like Japan and everything, I mean, all the programming, is that English, or is there
But the problem is it isn't just that it's programmed in English. It's that when you have to communicate with the other people within the company, and you have to communicate ideas. Like it's like, what are you wanting to do with this? Like you got to be able to tell Yoshida like that, right? And they're not going to want to have a translator on the spot just for this one developer.
So you kind of have to learn Japanese on top of being a good developer in order to work at Square Enix.
Unless they create like a team that is specific to the English side, and then that team's information is pushed to Japan. That's the only way I could see that working. I don't think you can work in a design situation without all being able to speak the same language effectively.
No, that makes sense. Agree. Okay, let's see. I think we got maybe 1 or 2 more questions here. What are your opinions on the WoW and Final Fantasy XIV player bases and how they've kind of mixed during the time since BFA launch? So I guess I kind of want to reduce that into, do you feel like the WoW player base is different than the Final Fantasy XIV player base?
I've never really believed that when people specifically blame a game for being toxic, it's always, to me, the more people that are there, the more likely you are to have those experiences. I feel like since BFA happened, it's the best thing that's happened to both WoW and 14, personally, because I've seen a lot of 14 people learning about World of Warcraft and the state of it, and kind of understanding and trying to compromise with the people who have been becoming WoW refugees from BFA. And that in turn has now gotten a lot of the 14 people who are now friends with WoW refugees mixing back and trying out Classic and going back over there. So whether or not they mesh in the long term, questionable at best. But I think it's been really good for the landscape of what I would consider the top 2 MMOs in the world right now.
Okay. Because I do see people talking every once in a while saying things like, oh, I went and did this WoW dungeon and I got spit on by the healer and they kicked me out like immediately, and then they were yelling at me because, And so, I mean, it happens, but that's because the people are going in there and it's easy to mess up, I guess, in the WoW dungeons right now and other things when you're going through this experience. And so people get angry quicker, maybe? I don't know.
Dude, people just don't have patience anymore. Yeah. Like people did this back in the day too, but nowadays it's like trigger finger instantly. Nobody's got time, especially nowadays. No one's got time to wait for your shit. All right.
Are you one of the people who spit on people happy?
No, I'm always like, oh my God, hurry up, like out loud to myself, but I don't type anything.
Okay. Toxic behind the keyboard.
I'm just gonna get through this. It's fine. You can't expect everybody to know what they're doing the first time. The only time I get upset is when something happens over and over. Like we were doing stockades runs, and one of the bosses has a fear and fears you in all the other rooms. So you're supposed to clear the other rooms first, and they just kept pulling right to the boss, and then people got feared. There's like 12 enemies, and I was like, please stop pulling the boss before the ads.
Then you
Can't
gotta
take it.
re-clear the beginning to get to even back to the boss.
Mm-hmm.
Miz, have you had any negative interactions that seemed unique to WoW in your experience so far?
I got accused of ninjaing healer shoulders because I respect to healer for stockades. And I was in like half feral gear, half like spirit gear, and these like leather spirit shoulders dropped. So I rolled need. And then the other tank was a druid, and he was like, "How dare you? Like, how are you ninjing? Blah blah blah. You're clearly feral." Blah. I'm like, if I'm here and I'm spec resto and I am needing on resto gear, like, I don't know. It's been like forever since I've encountered people like that are that upset about fucking green leather shoulders in the stockades. You know, like, I don't know. But for the most part, not really. Like, I feel like even when I encounter horde, and we're like PvPing, they'll like, we'll go back and forth basically, where I'll jump them when they're like half level or half HP, and like type slash laugh as they die, and then I'll go about my business and then get caught off guard by them, and then they'll like slash laugh slash spit, whatever. And to me, that's like all in good fun. You know, I don't take it seriously. I'm not that kind of person that like gets upset over shit like that. But I think that kind of interaction kind of makes it a little bit more fun in a sense. But again, I don't know, maybe I'm like a toxic world PvP here. But I don't know, like, I don't think there's really that much of a difference between the player bases. Like, everyone has the potential to be an asshole. You know, it does not matter what game you're playing. So it's just like who you follow or who you surround yourself with that's gonna dictate how your gaming experience goes.
So one more question here, and then I'll ask one last question to close up the show. But what do you guys feel about how do you feel about how the gear works while you're leveling in WoW versus how gear works in Final Fantasy when you're leveling? Is it about the same, or is it you feel more reward from the gear you get from WoW?
I feel that it's hard because like I've crafted so many of my pieces, but I do feel like there was at certain points where I did feel a little bit more desperate to get gear because it wasn't just being like this really good gear being handed to me. Like with 14, it's like, okay, I do a bunch of these quests and I get them out now. Well, at least with Shadowbringers, I'm getting boxes, right? So it's like I'm guaranteed I'm gonna get this like thing that's gonna definitely power me up, right? And with WoW, it's like I'm having to be either go to the market board if I want gear, or I have to make it myself, or I have to just do a lot more to get stronger. And once like I'm not talking about end game because like that's a completely different topic, right? Because like I'm just saying for my current stance in classic at level 31, that's kind of how it's been. Happy think and Miz are a little bit higher, so I don't know if they have a different opinion.
I think I've had to like buy a piece or two. Like I think at one point I got stuck with a weapon for way too many levels, and there was no quest nearby. The dungeons didn't have anything, so I grabbed one off the board for like a gold. But other than, I think it's only really a problem if you only do one activity in WoW. Like maybe if it's not dungeon, like dungeon should probably be fine, but you can't use like bosses drop maybe one or two things in a dungeon, and if that works for you, you know. Sometimes it depends on the dungeon. Sometimes a boss has 3 drops you can use. Sometimes there's 1 drop in the whole dungeon that you can use. And you might out-level that even before you even see it drop once. So I don't know. I don't think it's terribly difficult, but I know in both games I've had the experience of somebody just ignoring gear as they've leveled up and it being a pain in my ass. So doesn't matter how much gear you give someone, they have to want to upgrade it.
That's true. All right, guys. We'll finish up. I think there's a good question I want to close off on. Do you feel, and we're kind of going back to it, do you feel after all this is said and done, how much is really changing with the future of what's happening with us in MMOs? Is it pretty much going to stay the same on course and everything else is just kind of a nice thing that we have on the side? Or will things from Classic WoW actually inspire developers to do even more stuff from the elements of old? I see Happy going back and just, it looks like he's ready to just take in the question.
I would like to see some elements of like I think WoW's kind of design allows for a lot more community building with game mechanics itself because there's a lacking of so many tools. But I don't think that should be necessarily carried over into a current day MMO because of the lack of time of the general player base. And I don't think that would go over too well with an MMO that's fresh. I think WoW gets a little bit of a free pass because of the nature of it. Like I think people, I after thinking about it a lot more, I think a lot of people give it a free pass because they know the nature of what you're playing and you're going into. With a newer game, I just don't see that going over well. But I do think there are aspects that should probably be paying attention to, specifically with like how we brought up Ball Dusty and Arsenal earlier. Like I think that's an important, those type of pieces of content are important to include in newer MMOs.
Okay. Miz, do you want to answer before Happy gets into it?
Mine's a really short answer. But
Okay,
yeah,
we'll do.
Definitely let me go last.
ahead,
Let me go
Happy.
last.
Okay.
All right. All right. I've said it before. I'll say it again. WoW is never the example you base things off of because they have a huge privilege in being WoW.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just look at what they do and do it. It doesn't work ever. You can learn from the ideas, and even then, you still have to hope that it lands with people when they don't have a franchise to stay connected to. 14 probably could get away with it. I think BA only works in 14 because it's Final Fantasy. I think if you stick that in any other non-WoW, non-Final Fantasy game, it's just going to get laughed at. You just can't copy WoW. You can't do it. It never works. It just never does.
Okay.
I mean, WoW is copying WoW right now.
Like, they're the only one. That's the only one who's allowed to do it. They're the only ones who's allowed to do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Mez, anything else that you want to say on that?
I don't know. I think it's going to be one of those like swim or drown type things where Final Fantasy is in this position as a successful MMO in this day and age that they're going to need to like either innovate or do stuff that potentially draws from WoW, but has to be its own thing. Like it has to have like its own heart in it. And they're going to try it and throw it out there and see how it goes. Because I feel like WoW, you know, BFA, they tried to do a bunch of new stuff. They kind of failed at it. And while like, for example, like Legion, the previous WoW expansion, I feel like that did relatively well, but there's like this downward trend, right, for them. And so I feel like Final Fantasy definitely can't do what WoW has been doing. It has to stay true to its own game, its own nature, and hopefully that is enough. I honestly don't know. I can't predict the future or whatever, but
Right.
I feel like the path that they're going on, especially with Shadowbringers and how good it launched, I feel like they're in the right direction. It's just a matter of like keeping that going, right? And I feel like the reason that they're doing so well is because they're not trying to be WoW or classic WoW or anything like that. You know, they're just their own thing, and that has given them success so far. And I hope they see that and continue it. But yeah, I totally agree with Happy. You cannot just be WoW.
Okay. I think that's a really good note to end off on here. So we'll go ahead and go through, of course, the shout outs, kind of where people could find you and everything else. I appreciate everybody coming and watching the show, of course, but please follow the wonderful guests on the show. And I am going to go Kai first, and then I'll go around here counterclockwise. So Kai, tell everybody they know who you are, but where they could find you and get more of your opinions.
You can find me mostly on Twitter at Kaiyoko Star. And I thank you, Frosty and Mizzteq and Happy, for being on the show with me. And I'm Frosty for inviting me. But mostly what I have going on right now is I'm working on a Discord bot for Fashion Report. So it's not just for Fashion Report. Like if someone's looking up for an item right now that you don't know where it comes from, but it'll basically tell you where it comes from the game. It can literally search any item. So I'm gonna be continuing development on that if you want something convenient for Discord.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And Happy?
You can find me, Mr. Happy1227, Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, all those places. Currently trying to figure out what to do with my time. Borderlands 3 seems to be the winner, but tonight, live letter. And I will be doing a co-stream of that or a restream of that with commentary to see if there's anything exciting that's happening in 5.1 that we don't already know about. So thank you, Frosty, for having me on for this show. It's been a pleasure, as always.
Oh.
And Kai, Miz, it's always good to get to talk to you guys.
Oh. All right. And Mizzteq?
You can find me at everything /MTQ Capture. please, please, please be aware that there are people trying to impersonate me on Twitch and all these other places trying to scam you. Sorry for like kind of taking over, but it is like such a mess. So if you don't see something that is MTQCAPTURE, it's not me. So be careful when you're looking for Mizzteq stream.
You're getting hit with that more than anyone else right now.
Yeah, I almost said at the start of the show, wow, Miz, you're here. I thought you quit.
That's how you like trigger me instantly. But yeah, anyway, so that's how you can find me. I'm playing Final Fantasy VIII right now. It's fantastic. It is my very first Final Fantasy outside of 14 and a little bit of 15. And it's great fun. So if you want to watch me do that, you can do that on my Twitch. Okay. That's great. Otherwise, thanks, Frosty, for being awesome.
Oh, well, yeah, I just do that naturally. No. Thank you guys. You've all been a pleasure coming onto this show. It's always wonderful to talk to you guys and just have what feels like a really great conversation, stuff that we all care about. And it means a lot to me that you do give me your time on these Saturdays when I ask. Now, that to be said, too, I also want to thank everybody that's in chat right now that has come to watch this show and help make this happen just by being here. Thank you very much, Kerr, for being my emotional support in the background. And the whip, no.
Oh, that was something else, sorry.
Okay, no, that's fine.
It was directed at James in chat, okay.
Oh, okay, good.
But if you want it.
Yeah, it could be, maybe. She keeps me in line. And then Blizzana for the artwork that I put on the show for the layout and everything else. And Andre Kane for allowing me to use that awesome cover of that battle music in the intro and the closing of the show. I do also want to say that next week we will be having a show where we're bringing on someone who's kind of newer to the community that has come from a League of Legends background, Dyrus. He'll be on the show next week. Our plan to, and we'll keep in touch. You guys just follow me on Twitter to see kind of how all that's going to go. So we will all get to kind of know him a little bit better and his perspective as a new player coming into this game. Let's see, anything else? No, I think that's oh, I did have one thing. I did mention it on Twitter, and we are still working to see if we can make it happen. A lot of awesome creators of things, material goods within the Final Fantasy XIV community, will be maybe working with them to see if we could do some giveaways to show off their work, and see maybe you could win some really awesome custom made pins or shirts or multiple other things. Okay, well, with that being said, thank you. Remember, guys, we all play Final Fantasy and other games online together. Make sure to love each other and be wonderful to each other. And of course, remember to be good, keep cool, stay frosty. See you guys next week. Bye, guys. Does everybody say bye? You guys say it.
All right.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
I done mute. Bye.
Okay.